environment to teach us. To send Te Ko out to the harbour would put a blight on these teachings. How could we? E te aku nei te hao o ngā moana. And we are also so blessed to have Papa Hone Taimona, who, as Waikoru shared, teaches us things like, from the ropes that bind everything in this world, man is but a member of that rope. And what he does to the rope, he does to himself. To send Te Ko out to the harbour whānau would put a blight on these teachings. How could we? Or perhaps let me be so bold as to say it like this, that to send Te Ko out to the harbour is to shit all over these teachings. Oh, what a blight on the fabric of this community, iwi hapu whānau. Whānau mā, e te aki nei te hao o ngā moana. Protect the living essence of our moana. So while the applicants for this proposal may think that they are solving a problem, let me put it to you that to go through with this proposal would mean that many more problems would arise for the well-being of this local community, iwi, hapu, whānau. None of which would be something that applicants would have to deal with. But let me finish with this, whānau. E huri ana te tai. The tide is turning. Let the community, iwi hapu whānau, work with you to find real solutions. The expertise and the desire is here. And let us not go down as those who blighted the future for us all. E te aki nei, te hā o ngā moana, protect the living essence of our seas. Nō reira, huri noa ngā kukuna e wha o tēnei whare. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou.
Kia ora.
Tēnei wea tātu o mana atu i a pāpāpon. Ka mei kuta whakapoko.
beautiful, and just congratulations, young man, you're quite a fun speaker. And I hope all the young people coming here, excuse me, I hope that the thought of standing up and public speaking is often much, much scarier than actually just showing up, and that speaking to people like us can be quite intimidating, but never ever let your fears stop you standing up. So, kia ora. Thank you.
Tēnā koe. Kia ora.
Aroha mai whānau te kira, tamariki back to kura.
Janine McVeigh talking or another one I Rawene. I'm actually got two slots here, a brief one for the Green Party and one for my own self. They are actually quite different, but I'll keep them quite short. The reason I'm doing the Green Party one is the reason I'm doing the Green Party one is because our branch has been involved in this issue in its former incarnation as a values party 41 years ago. The Green Party is an international organisation spanning many countries. It's composed of activists in many fields, of which I'm one, with the parliamentary arm being only one tool to bring about environmental and social change. So I'm not here as an electioneering thing. I'm here because this is an international body that speaks on behalf of society and the planet. And New Zealand's Values Party was actually the first Green Party in the world. It was also, as I say, part of the initial objections to the 1982 consent submission. Because you've got my submission there, I won't go into any great detail except to say that the party operates under the principles of its charter. The charter, at the top of the charter, the Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand accepts Te Tiriti o Waitangi as the founding document of Aotearoa New Zealand, recognises Māori as tangata whenua in Aotearoa New Zealand and commits to the following principles. So that is an extremely important thing, and it influences everything that we say or do as individuals and as a branch. Those principles are ecological wisdom, social responsibility, appropriate decision making, and non-violence, all of which really are breached by the application. The environmental policy states that all human activity takes place within the limits of a finite planet. Can't go on extracting forever. Ipu and Hapu rights under Article 2 of Te Tiriti o Waitangi to manage and develop their resources must be recognised and supported. So that is why we are so supportive of everything that has gone before, all that has been said here. We all have a responsibility to conserve, protect and restore ecosystem health and integrity, with action on climate change mitigation and adaptation being particularly urgent. And those are the bases on which our objection to the proposed application rests. I'm just going to make a couple of comments and then I'll go into my own thing. Environmentally, there are numerous issues with the plant. Human waste contains pathogens, viruses, heavy metals and elements such as nitrogen. But as Mina Pomeri-Pieta pointed out yesterday, and I'm really glad she did because this is often forgotten, it also contains nutrients. And actually Dallas talked about this morning as well, which while harmful in a marine environment are necessary for the health of the soil. So when you just remove sludge and go and dump it in a quarry somewhere, you're actually depriving the soil of the nutrients that it needs to grow plants. And that is, frankly, ridiculous. While it's not up to us, so in the 21st century, enough is known about how to manage sewage in a way that keeps it out of the water and returns it safely to land. There's no longer any reason to continue a 19th century system of disposal. Dilution is not the solution, as Dallas so eloquently showed us this morning. While it is not up to us to decide on the precise method of treatment and disposal, and treatment's important, not just disposal, we acknowledge that much work has been done on the Rawene WWTP. The site may be different, but the same principles can be applied to arrive at a land-based system that does not view human waste as only a problem, but also as a resource. We strongly recommend that the consent be given for a maximum of 3 years with an enforceable mandate requiring a land-based solution through working collaboratively with local hapu and community who have set their own terms of reference. That's all I'm going to say on the Green Party one, and I'm going to go to my own one, because I think, even though I don't need much time, I'm going to just bring up a couple more things that maybe haven't really been offered. You have my original one. I'm just going to expand it a little. As it's been said by myself and other people, I've been doing this for 41 years. I've been an activist actually for coming up 60 years, I figured, and I'm pretty sick of it actually. I'd really, really, really like to retire and just do my garden. You know, I'm missing all these nice days in my garden this week, and it's like, when I began this journey, I was 36 and my youngest kid had just started school. Now I'm 77 and my middle kid over there is, I won't say how old she is, but she was 10 at the time.
Old.
And now my 4th great-grandchild is due in August. I'm pretty over it. And if you give me any more than 3 years, I'm going to be more than 80 years old. Can't wait. I'm not going to be 107. It's ridiculous. Anyway, so the top of my thing here is, this is something I like as a quote. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. That's George Santayana, who died about 120 years ago. As a researcher and local historian, you'll see at the top I've got a bunch of degrees. Mine are different. I'm not a technician, I'm not a scientist. I'm an educator. My degrees are in languages, literature and education, and that's what informs the way I look at the world. As a researcher and local historian, these words often come to my mind. On Tuesday, we heard tamariki from Te Kura a Iwi on Omanaya speak of their history and their connection to Te Moana o Hokianga and the place to which this history has brought us. A request for the extension of pollution to this most significant of places. By ignoring the cultural significance of Hokianga Nuia Kupu, Hokianga Whakapau Karakia, the FNDC are repeating the mistakes of history. Those tamariki, one of whom was my own grandson, will have to live with those mistakes that we, their elders, have made. I don't need to reiterate how strong the feelings are about this. You've been hearing them all week, and right now, just now. So why have the decision makers defied those associations, those feelings, and insisted there's no alternative but to continue to inflict this insult on this place and these people? This despite the local law, the laws governing local bodies that say that Te Tiriti o Waitangi must be upheld. If you begin, this goes right back to the beginning, to the initial concepts of the system. Now, I wrote a book. It's one of the things I do. I write books. And this is my bestseller, The History of the Sewage Systems in Hokianga. Probably sold more copies than my other books. This goes right, so the initial concept of the system, on page 13, and it doesn't take very long to read this. Where's page 13? Fraser Thomas were engaged as engineers on the 11th of May 1982. On the 14th of May, Fraser Thomas wrote to the HCC saying they had had very little time to prepare the data to meet the deadline for advertising. Accompanying this, and I saw this, 4 pages of roughly scrawled, handwritten calculations. This is the foundation of this stuff, showing dilution of effluent after discharge. These, as several objectors later noted, are assumptions only. No base data are offered, and every stage of the calculations begins with assumed to be, or say. The one reference cited is for vertical velocity and still water from Proceedings of International Symposium, London 1974. In the letter they also note they have had discussions with local people. It would appear that some of them feel we should treat the effluent to a higher standard. So they propose adding a 7-day detention pond and suggest that a conciliatory solution would be to initially build, while flows are low, only the irrigated lagoon and monitor the outfall, but agree at a later stage to add the tertiary treatment. That appears to have taken quite a while. So they did the thing in about a week. It was handwritten. It was about 4 pages, 4 A4 pages, sort of scrawled, a couple of bit of, sort of things on it, and kind of, if we assume that, then this might work. Yeah, that'll do. We'll do that. Unbelievable. It's unbelievable. If you begin with a bad foundation, and you did, the structure will only get worse over time, and it has. Actually, I have to say this was the Hokianga County Council, which preceded the final District Council. So I've been here through 2 different local bodies, and God knows how many mayors, councillors and all this. I was even the chairperson of the community board at one stage. Okay. The words, so I'm a word person, the words that have recurred throughout the hearings are cost, which in this context seems to mean financial cost, as though there were no other meaning, and science, which is to say the reductionist approach of Western science only, and practicable, which seems to mean whatever you want it to mean. As my submission tells you, I have been part of this ongoing project to keep human waste out of the harbour since 1982. At that time, the capital cost of the new wastewater system was underwritten by the government, mostly, as Craig reminds us, they actually had to pay something as well. Cost wasn't as much of a factor as it appears to be now. There was no RMA and no requirement to acknowledge Te Tiriti o Waitangi. So despite several objectors, notably Matua John Clarisic, and I take my hat off to John, he has been in there. John's 87 now.
No,
and
92.
He's 92. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I knew he was a few years older than me. We met during this and have been very strong friends and colleagues ever since. Where am I? Citing cultural objections, these could be and were ignored. Even the patronising way they're talked about It comes up in this document. It's worth reading, and it's free. We were told by the hearing there would be investigation, this is back then, into land-based alternatives over the next 30 years of consent. It's all right, we've got 30 years, we'll sort it out, we'll get something land-based. Well, they never bothered. Why should they? Nobody made them. On the renewal earlier this century, the hollow council-dominated CLG, which you heard about from Roger and you heard about from Graham Tucker, was not allowed to focus on alternatives. So 10 years, their terms of reference didn't ever say you're looking for an alternative. So 10 years were effectively wasted maintaining the polluting status quo despite changes in the law requiring recognition of Te Tiriti or Waitangi. I'm also a founding member of Te Māori o Te Wai, which is why all these people are sitting here with me. I'm the secretary, actually, and the chairman, although we've only got a couple $100 in the bank. I researched and wrote this history of sewage systems, which traces the development or lack of it in subsequent councils' dealings with these systems. I hope you've been able to read the relevant sections anyway. I've given you another copy so you can. Te Māori o Te Wai began as a CLG, but one which took control of the process, deciding how to define membership and where to meet. All this is really down to Dallas, fantastic. Manage the meetings and most importantly set out the timetable and objectives alongside the council. The purpose, we always had a purpose. The purpose was always to get human waste out of the harbour. It wasn't perfect and time was wasted on side issues. We probably could have wrapped it up in less than 5 years, I reckon, but we eventually got there. There most definitely needs to be a community liaison group for both systems, with their basic purpose to replace the existing systems with one that fulfills the cultural criteria. Instead of being constantly at war with Hapu, Council needs to work together with them to arrive at a solution. There is no other way to do it. By insisting on looking for solutions ahead of affordability, Te Māori o Te Wai found a treatment system that is culturally acceptable. You've heard it before, electrocoagulation. Not even new. The treatment itself is relatively cheap. It will be the dispersal of the clean water that it generates that requires land. And as you heard from Dallas, it's so clean, people are going to say, whoopee, I'd like that in the dry years. This raises the question of why it's fine to send semi-treated semi-treated waste directly to water, but it's a problem as runoff from land.
Sure.
Bizarre. However, after EC treatment, this water is now totally clean, therefore it can be allowed to flow eventually into wetland, existing or constructed. It's easier to manage, so the treatment's important. The first tranche of 3 Waters is financing our pilot system for Rawene, as well as a person to work with landowners to shift it from its current site. This story refutes 2 assertions, that you don't need a TLG, and you always have to raise rates to pay for it. Whaia Hilda Hokianga commented on that on Tuesday, and she is right. Do the right thing first. Another story about putting the solution ahead of Te Costas Te Ono. I was interested to hear you talk about Nelson. The one I do know about is Te Ono. That community wanted to keep all the effluent out of Lake Te Ono. It's a rich white community with a beautiful lake for tourists love to come to. They persisted. They got 2 grants from the government's tourism fund. I think they got something like $15 million, and the whole thing cost them 22, which they then raised from a wider area than just Te Ono Village. Why wouldn't you? They got it. I think it was opened last year or maybe the year before. So, has the council investigated the tourism fund? Did they try for any other funding? Several $1 million of PFG went into the beautiful Mahia Centre, which you saw many of those children have been involved with, which daily tells the story of the connection of Ngāti Korokoro and the harbour. At the same time, there's sewage going out in front of Te Mānia Centre. And of course, 3 Waters in whatever form it will take. Why not? This harbour is, after all, a national and international taonga. Equally as important as Lake Te Ono, more important actually, more important to me, and more important and far more known internationally and culturally, historically, economically, environmentally. It's the cost of not taking human effluent out of the harbour is much, much greater over the long term on every level. So when you talk about cost, you're not just talking about money, you're talking about the cost to everything else. Science. As you commissioners have noted, the parameters of Western science are pretty much met a lot of the time by the proposed upgrades. Science just means knowledge. I'm a word person, it comes from the Latin, okay? Skill. Science means knowledge, which is a much wider thing than reducing a fundamental element as water to its component parts. You heard it yesterday, talking about the much deeper, wider, greater significance that there is about water than just dissect a butterfly and you no longer have the living creature you are trying to understand. Tangata whenua concepts of why are far more encompassing than hydrogen, oxygen and fecal coliforms. Western science should not be ranked more highly, I'm sorry to hear anyone say that, than Māori concepts of why. We are supposed to be moving towards genuine partnership. Broadening concepts of science is one major area where everyone will benefit. I don't know who saw this morning, it popped up on my Wāwhia News. Noted Māori academic Linda Tuhiwai Smith has been elected as a lifetime international member of the United States National Academy of Sciences. Professor Smith, distinguished professor at Te Whare Wānanga o Rawene, was recognised for his transformative contributions to education and Indigenous science methodologies. The Academy says she developed foundational ways to decolonise the process of science by developing a more critical understanding of the underlying assumptions, motivations and values that inform research processes. So never talk to me again about Western science being the only kind of science that there is. But it's recognised internationally that is just one aspect of science. Finally, that word practicable. It acts as a brake on carrying out the intention of the act. It is a very convenient loophole for doing nothing. It just means possible to do. Is it practicable to keep human sewage out of the harbour? Council says it is for Rawene and Taipa, but not for Operating and Pōko. No evidence is given for that assertion except a couple of desktop studies. Here we go, desktop studies, assertions, assumptions. That is what they said about Rawene too. We proved them wrong. Once those engineers put their boots on and actually walked around the place, they identified 7 possible dispersal sites, and we weren't even talking about treatment at that stage, on this hilly, slipping clay peninsula. Suddenly, it was practicable. The opportunity to remove human effluent out of this iconic harbour comes around only once every few decades. This week is history in the making. We have spent over 40 years arguing about it, despite the evidence that it can be done. I urge you, Commissioners, to be on the right side of history. It can and must be done to remove human effluent from the Hokianga harbour. I recommend a maximum of 3 years with an enforceable mandate to find a land-based solution through real partnership with the appropriate hapu and the local community who have selected their own people and developed their own term of reference. Kia ora koutou. That's all. I feel like this is not my first rodeo. I've been in front of many hearings, as you can probably imagine, about every conceivable thing you can think about. You know, wars and oil and prisons and I don't know what else, obviously. And I think I have felt that you two have heard us more than any other commissioners that I've sat in front of, with the exception of Kevin Pine. So thank you very much.